Hi everyone, I'm Mitch Hanley from Inventory Hive, and I'm delighted to say that I've been joined by three very popular people in the co-living business. This webinar today is about creating the perfect resident journey. So we're delighted to be joined by three people today, all kind of linked together because Inventory Hive and Harmonics have come together to build a nice little integration which helps people like Rob, which we'll come on to in a second, just help streamline their property management, especially for their residents in the co-living industry. So before we get started, I'm just going to get into some house rules for everyone. So first of all, thanks for everyone that's registered today. If you do want a recording of this webinar, we'll be sending this out around 24 hours after this session has been completed. So do keep an eye out for that email if you want to share that recording with anyone as well. If you've got any questions on the right-hand side, there'll be a little chat bot or question section. Just pop your questions in there, and then one of us will get back to you after the webinar and answer your questions should you have any. But we do encourage some questions, and we look forward to receiving those. So on to that, I'll be starting the introduction. So first of all, Giles, thanks for joining us on today's webinar. If you want to just do a quick introduction of who you are, what you do, and yeah, take it from there.
Thanks, Mitch. Hi, I'm Giles from Harmonics. We provide software for promoting, running, and managing innovative living properties for short and long stay. Obviously, for the purpose of today, we do a lot of work with co-living and build to rent, but also we do that with service departments and any residential that has a hospitality element to it. I've worked in actively managed residential and service departments for the last 13 years as a software provider and consultant to the industry. And prior to that, I worked for 10 years developing and operating service departments and build to rent in Birmingham. That's me. And our software provides a sort of platform that brings a lot of the tools together to run these types of business.
Perfect stuff. And Alex, thanks for joining us today as well. So Alex, if you just do a quick introduction of who you are and what you do and how you can contribute today. Yeah.
So I'm head of the build to rent team at Inventory Hive, and obviously build to rent stems largely into the co-living space as well. So I'll be sort of contributing by providing my elements and resident side of things and the importance of the reporting elements.
Perfect. And we're delighted to be joined by Rob, who is a mutual client of Inventory Hive and Harmonics, and we're delighted to have him on board today. So Rob, a quick introduction of who you are and how and what you do at Gravity Co-Living. Yeah.
Yes, so I head up the operations for Gravity Co. We've been operating now for over 3 years with a selection of different asset types, from large-scale HMOs, purpose-built co-living conversions, to the more kind of traditional build-to-rent, which we add then that layer of community and flexibility that co-living is known for. We're in a bit of a growth stage at the moment, and where we started to where we are now has been quite a change, and that's where I've obviously met both Alex and Giles, and using their software to streamline our operations and get the most out of it all.
Perfect stuff. So you touched upon there that you're on a bit of a growth stage at the moment, and I suppose that kind of stems from the point of where you might have seen in the news at the shortage of homes available to rent, especially in the PRS sector. So I suppose my first question is, so what are the key benefits of co-living for residents? And I suppose I'll direct that question back to you, Rob, if that's okay, especially with the growth that you're currently having.
Yeah, so I think the main kind of difference with co-living, so to speak, compared to traditional build to rent is the kind of flexibility that's on offer. So we're looking here at between 3 to 12 months rental agreements. So it's a lot more flexible than traditional ASTs that are out there. Also, the kind of hassle-free aspect of it as well. We've mentioned previously before we started this conversation regarding utilities. Obviously, that's a big issue these days with the fluctuation in prices and everything else. So having this kind of all-inclusive, hassle-free one rental payment covers everything really helps with with the tenants, ability to live their own life and not have to deal with all of this. And then on top of that, then, which is something that I'm very passionate about, is the kind of community element. I'm from a small town, small coal mining town in the Welsh Valleys. Everyone knows everyone. Everyone works in the same place. Everyone goes to the same club, cricket club, football club, rugby club, etc. And that sense of community is something that I've been very much involved with from an early age, and I think it's something that we're helping bring to the cities now, where co-living is. We know our neighbours again. We know what people like and what people don't like, if that makes sense. We're connecting with not just the members inside the properties, but also the wider neighbourhood. And I think that brings a lot of benefits that traditional build to rent has been lacking, and something that not just co-living, but build to rent in general is really pushing towards now.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. The element of the stress-free living in terms of the flexibility is very good, and then the community feel. And I'd even go one step further and just say the opportunity, especially for young professionals, to essentially network within their local hub. So obviously, if you've got 300 apartments, studio apartments in a co-living space, you've then got 300 potential other young professionals, potentially wider knowledge base, and everybody can learn something from everybody at the end of the day, can't they? So it gives that ample opportunity within the amenity spaces when you are building a strong community like you do at Gravity.
Yeah, that's something. Go on, Giles, sorry.
Go on, Rob, please, you go. No.
Yeah, I was just going to say that we've seen companies formed from within inside Gravity. We've seen a lot of research being done, because we have a base of that young professional, ranging, I guess, from around the age of 24 to say 35, roughly. And we've had companies formed. We've had companies collaborate within Gravity, and also across our properties as well. So we've had people moving from our West Court site coming to our Gravity Finsbury Park site to get research, to get customer feedback and things like this. So the network potential there, both on a social and a professional side, is very strong.
Yeah, we've also seen it work very well for people moving to cities where you potentially would otherwise be in a studio or one bed on your own. You get that sort of world of a shared space, but you're not in a shared house where perhaps you don't get on with some of the people. There's often enough space in a co-living property to have completely different groups of people living and working together in one place, and it provides that sort of there's a lot of chat about the loneliness epidemic caused by like social media and people always being on their phones. Actually, the facilitation by the hosts at properties where it's not just all of this space and all of these people, but it's actually, if you're interested in these activities, we're going to be running an event that's going to do that. And actually, you're also seeing residents inside of those properties creating their own groups and using the spaces as well. So I just think it gives a really good sort of benefits compared to just living on your own in a one bed shared house or similar, to actually having that massive diversity of people in there and interests in there as well.
Yeah, I think you touched on a nice point there, Giles, about it sort of assisting with and providing a balance within this loneliness epidemic as well that we're experiencing. I think I hadn't even considered it in that sense. It brings a lot more positives to the table in that sort of sense. I think generally the co-living element provides a slightly cheaper rental fee as well versus your traditional build to rent. So you might want the apartment feel within a block in the middle of a city. However, the smaller room size per square foot generally will make your rents that little bit cheaper, but you don't lose any of the sort of amenity spaces and facilities. So I think that's another benefit to it as well for the renter.
No, that's absolutely perfect. I was going to touch up on a question about creating like how ideal community for your residents, but you kind of all touch upon on the way about co-living and how it avoids loneliness. But are there any other like facilities or any extra, just trying to think of the right words, almost like any other needs or preferences that residents ask for in a co-living environment?
I think what I've seen a lot of co-living operators provide is those local resident events that Rob just touched on there. And what I've seen other operators do, and Rob, you'll correct me here if you don't do this currently, but they generally tend to invite other local businesses to the table. So if there's a coffee shop down the road, for example, they might bring them in, and then that's just creating a ripple effect around the building. So then more people get to know more people, and as you said, everybody's starting to know their neighbours even within the major cities now, which is great to see.
Yeah, I think something that a lot of developers look at co-living and look at creating community is about just providing amenity space.
Yeah.
If you've got a lounge, if you've got a rooftop bar or whatever it may be, just because you have it on site doesn't mean therefore a community is going to be created. You need to have these people there to help facilitate it. And again, this should be a bottom-up approach rather than a top-down. You know, when Gravity started, we believed we knew what type of tenants, or as we call them, members, will be coming in and what they want and what they'll need, etc. But really, until you get the tenants and the members through the front door, only then you can actually start to kind of build that data, that understanding of who your customers are and what their needs are. And I think it's really important to be flexible, especially when you start, or especially if you open up in a new city or country, which is what we're looking at doing now, is that to be agile to adapt to the needs of your members. Obviously, having the amenity spaces is great, and you can obviously then use that and utilize that. But it's also using the wider neighbourhood. So look outside of the four walls. There's so much on offer, especially here in London, where Gravity's mainly based. You're talking about coffee shops, you're talking about local gyms, you're talking about even local services. It could be, you know, local breweries, local yoga instructors, things like this. And it's about connecting that. And something that was mentioned earlier, you know, co-living is perfect for new people moving to a city and acting as that stepping stone and really being that kind of catalyst for you know, individuals to grow and connect. And I think when it comes to creating a community, you need to understand that communities have a life cycle, you know, and the operator needs to really push in early doors and kind of show the way, so to speak. So there's a lot more, for example, with Gravity, you know, we would be doing a lot of the events, collecting this data, getting feedback, putting a lot of effort and energy in. And then soon, you know, it's like a plant, you've got the seed and then it starts growing. And then you take a kind of step back and you're just there to help guide it, make sure it doesn't go off
giving it a trim every 6 months
exactly.
or so, pruning the bushes.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
And you know, we have this thing now where we call it kind of community creatives, where we get our members involved to, you know, come up with ideas. And, you know, 1 month it could be one member doing a weekly communal dinner. Another month it'll be a different member. And then all of a sudden you've got 1 month of maybe, you know, Indian food. Next week you've got, you know, British food. Next week you've got, you know, food from the Philippines, and this kind of international aspect as well really helps, you know, that learning and that growth.
No, that's some great insight, Rob, especially from the experiences that you've seen from running a co-living building like yourself. So that's really good to hear. When obviously at the start of when residents move in, this is more for you, Alex. Ideally, they'll get a check-in inventory report or an inventory report when they move in. So my question to you as such, Alex, is how do property inspection reports help improve resident satisfaction, especially in a co-living environment?
I mean, obviously, I can talk about the importance of an inventory report till the cows come home. I can bore a glass eye to sleep with that one. But generally, how it would enhance satisfaction, or at least my personal perception, and from operators I've spoken with, it almost sets the expectations with the resident early, and it also generally provides the impression that it does give off this element that the operator cares about their building. And obviously, if the operator cares about the building, that means they're caring about the people in the building. And obviously, if they feel that the operator or that building cares about them, they too will generally feel more satisfied, and then in turn they will care about the building themselves. And I think a lot of the reports that I see as well, it means that there's no miscommunication between resident or member, as you refer to them, Rob, and then the building itself. It's all very clear cut, so there can be no misunderstanding between the two. And generally, misunderstanding or misinterpretation is where people get frustrated. So removing that element, that just means that then the satisfaction levels are gonna be driven.
Yeah, I think the communication is, and I'm sure we'll touch on it a number of times throughout this conversation. Good comms with guests and hosts is the centre to creating a great community and
completely agree.
And trust that people have across, a really active and thriving community where the house rules are set out, the level of service to be expected, creates great retention for guests staying, great satisfaction for the guests staying, and it's part of the other side to this whole co-living world that I'm very keen on, is that it creates a brand that you can trust and you can move amongst the portfolio for the co-living operators. Rob was touching on it a few minutes ago, but they will have people move within the portfolio because actually maybe their work is taking them to a different area inside of London. You might decide that actually you might do 6 months in Finsbury Park and then 6 months in Camden to get a different vibe, but know that you're underneath the professional umbrella that is Gravity. And that gives them real certainty. And your inventory piece is it's one of the first steps in that on that journey to say, hey, look, we care about what we're offering you. We want the quality to be there, and here is our sort of certification of that.
Yeah, it almost sets a stall out, because obviously there's a difference on handing an inventory report on the back of a cigarette packet compared to one digitally, which they can feed back on and sign digitally as well, and it's all captured and audit trailed as well. So it's a great point about how it's all professional from the start, and it just sets that tone throughout the resident journey.
Nice little plug to Inventory Hive and their features there, Mitch. Well done. But yeah, certainly with what Giles was saying there, it sort of comes back to what we said at the start about flexibility as well, because obviously residents can move between buildings. You want them guarded under that umbrella. But I posted something on LinkedIn the other day actually about essentially, and Rob, this comes back to your point about the shorter term leases. They could essentially pick up a 30-day, 3-month lease, and then ultimately you want that retention piece. So as long as it's not outside circumstances, but if you've done something wrong within those first 30 days, then they will look for a new building. However, if you've obviously set the standard, had good communication, they'll think, oh, I like it here, I'll stay. And then obviously you're not having void periods or anything like that. So it's in your best interest as an operator to make sure that they are satisfied, essentially, because ultimately they're subscribing to stay with you every month. It's just the same as your Netflix account or something like that. If they don't keep providing you with a good service, then you will leave and go somewhere else. So same concept.
Yeah, I think in regards to starting on the right foot, so to speak, having these inventories done correctly, and so easily from an operator perspective, being able to send them out digitally, sending them out quickly, getting the responses quickly, it makes that part of the journey so much easier. I think from my side, looking from an operator perspective, we want to get through the boring parts, but the important parts as quickly and smoothly as possible. And sending these digital inventories definitely helps us achieve that. But then also from a customer perspective, because obviously we're talking about the customer journey here. Again, they're getting this before they move in. We send it a day or two beforehand, so they already have a chance to kind of go through it. So the expectations are kind of met there, but also they understand the their responsibility as well then, because this is a relationship here. I don't want to be Gravity's not a servant, so to speak.
Yes.
We're working in a relationship with our members, and they understand, okay, this is what I'm going into, this is the standard that Gravity had provided the apartment or the studio, the room, etc. in, and it's now my responsibility to maintain that as well as possible. So I think that's important. And something else as well, when it comes to kind of customer service, and I'm sure we'll go into this in more detail, the inventory is basically one of the first things they get and one of the last things they get in the journey. So it's got so much potential to affect their whole stay.
Whether it be getting them off on the right foot or the wrong foot, or also leaving with a bitter taste in their mouth if you get it wrong at the end. Completely agree.
So my background before co-living was hospitality, and it's the check-in and the check-out are the most important times, because that's when they're going to leave us a review. Basically, that's where they're going to get the experience kind of from at the end. But what your inventories do, it helps us deal in facts. So, it's not hearsay or anything. It's like, here's timestamp photos of what the room's like beforehand.
Yeah.
Here's timestamp photos when you leave. Like, we deal in facts. We respect their emotions, and we help work through that. But we just deal in facts. So there's no issues if we're going to potentially deduct something from the deposit or not. We're dealing in facts, and we're respecting emotions. And I think your inventories help us do that.
No, perfect stuff. The next question, I suppose, is mainly for you, Giles. So, how does technology or Res Harmonics help people like Rob and residents as well enhance their experience in co-living spaces?
Yeah, it's very, very much around the experience, really. The communicate. From the beginning of the interaction with a co-living provider, with Gravity, the customer's going to want good communication. So we will provide automated emails, an online journey that makes it very easy for the customer to book. And then for the whole correspondence between the two individuals, it will take a lot of the administration out for the guys at Gravity. So they can actually spend their time focusing on the individual and building the community, rather than doing all of that admin. So, I mean, automation is a big piece. Reduction of admin for both the guest and for the host is absolutely key. But also providing really strong information. It touches again on your point about the Inventory Hive and having a set out piece of information. We have tools that will affect the guest, such as a guest app, a guest portal, where you can actually set out the stall as to what's in the property. You can use it to report maintenance issues. You can use it to see bills. You can bring a repository of information about their interaction with the business. So that's a big one. The time that's saved by all of that can then be used to invest in providing a really nice service and actually facilitating that community. To have tools that allow you to focus on the stuff that matters to the guest is key. And so for the host to be able to focus, to be able to see the woods for the trees, it is really essential. The other side to all of this, of course, is we capture an awful lot of information during the booking process, during the stay, during their interactions with the business around maintenance, around events that they're interested in, and so on, so that you can segment your customers more, so you can serve them better. So you could say in Finsbury Park, just calling out a couple of Rob's properties, or Camden or Reading, we've got a higher quantity of sports enthusiasts in one area, or foodies in another area, or a real mix in these properties. What sort of services should we be offering? What sort of events should we be offering? And to be able to capture the feedback into it, capturing information allows Rob and his team to manage by exception as well. So they can put the right sort of events on, they can do the right sort of hosting, but they can also see if someone is unhappy or for any reason maintenance activities taken longer than perhaps it was previously expected to, that we can communicate with them and knock it on the head or serve them better, so that we get that higher level of satisfaction across
and catch anything early then as well, which is obviously going to drive that satisfaction even higher. I think that's a really good piece.
I love the social aspect as well. Like I said, I can capture what residents like, and you can target that their specific.
An operator can start to tailor their service essentially, and then it becomes more. Well, the brand just improves as a result, doesn't it? No, I really like that piece.
It does. There's some really interesting bits in co-living, and talking to Rob and his team, and there's that sort of focus on who's your target market. Are they young professionals? Are they technologists? Is that driven by the area where you're opening up? I know the guys are mainly in London at the moment, but looking for some properties in different parts of Europe as well, and whether that's going to change. Being able to understand and get the right service at the get-go, but it evolves as well. Every city has different people staying at different times of the year, and particularly with the flexibility of leases that you see in co-living, you're not always going to have sportsmen in an area or foodies in an area. Actually, it could be 1 month, 2 months of, hey, we've got quite a lot of people who are interested in X, but the following, as your property evolves and as your community evolves, you're staying on top of it.
Yeah, I think something that's obviously we've been using Harmonics now for I don't know how long, but we've been using it long enough now to understand its benefits, basically. But the amount of time that it saves us is unbelievable. To be honest, we haven't had to expand our team as much as we thought we would have, because this technology helps us, be agile, basically, and that is great because we can spend that time then, as Giles kind of mentioned, caring about our members. It's not about taking away these automated emails that get sent out, these booking activities that get automatically created, and this type of thing. It's not there to take away the human interaction. It's there so we can make the most of that time, and really benefit from it. And that's where technology, AI, and whatever else, that's how it should be used in a
as a benefit
service. And that's been great. But also, I kind of mentioned it earlier that when Gravity first opened, we thought we were going to get X, Y, and Z, but the data then it's all about seeing what you actually get, if that makes sense, and tailoring that way. When we had our first property, Finsbury Park, I actually lived there. So I lived there. I understood it. I was a member. I was a customer, so I could see it from both sides. So I could easily make decisions because I understood it. Unfortunately, as we grow, I won't be able to live in all our properties at the same time. But the data that we can collect then from Harmonics, from Inventory Hive, and other technologies that we use, we're making decisions, and it's a bottom-up approach then, because we're not making these decisions from our own just opinions. This is data-driven decisions to make sure that we're offering what our tenants want, and what our members want, and that means that we're constantly evolving. We say on our website, we listen, we adapt, and we grow together, and that's so true. In the real estate sector, it's very old school and very slow to adapt. I think co-living has really helped kind of
re-energize the industry.
Exactly. So yeah, it's been great using Harmonics. It's saved me a lot of time, I would say save me from pulling out my hair, but that's already gone. but yeah, it's been great to use so far, and I'm sure there's some more developments to come in that technology.
Well, if you're saving, say, 2 hours of admin, there's a community event you can put on or something, isn't it, Rob? So
exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I said that now we're spending, with the maintenance side of things, the maintenance side of things, basically co-living, you've got your property management, your facility management, the boring day-to-day stuff that it's been done before. Like, we're not really changing much there, apart from being more reactive and proactive. But then you've got the community side. If you fail on the property management side, it doesn't matter how great the events you do, how good the service then in regards to like partnerships or whatever it is. If the tenant's underwater because there's a leak, or there's a fire, or they can't get into their property, whatever it is, it honestly doesn't matter what you do from a community perspective. And we've seen it. We've seen it when we've taken over new buildings and it's been a snagging period. You can see how it impacts then the community side. We've also seen how the community side has actually helped us when we've had issues to kind of counterbalance it. But it's so important now that as we continue to grow and we double in size year by year, hopefully, that we can ensure that the property management is being done correctly and well with the technology that we use, so then our members and our staff can actually enjoy the community side of things and spend that time where it really matters. Because at the end of the day, we like to say that we sell experience rather than beds, if that makes sense. But you still need to have the bed as well. So it's getting both sides of the company, moving in the right direction. Without one, you don't have the other.
Yeah, that's some really good points there, and it kind of leads on perfectly to my next question. So you mentioned about the property management side and maintenance, especially you guys. You mentioned about the importance of maintenance issues as well. So Alex, obviously you can create mid-term inspections or mid-tenancy inspections. So this is a perfect opportunity to capture some issues. So from your experience, why are these inspections really important for operators like Rob?
Well, I mean, you've sort of just answered the question in terms of the maintenance element. It gives you that opportunity to catch anything early. So whether the resident hasn't deemed a maintenance issue strong enough to go via the Res Harmonics app, for example, however, then Rob or his team or any other operator for that matter goes in and goes, oh, the extractor fan isn't working in the bathroom, then obviously you've got that opportunity to capture that. Not all residents notice that sort of thing. And obviously that can have detrimental effects, mold, build up like that, and then when they move out, for example, you might have to reseal the whole bathroom, something along those lines. I know it's a drastic example, but it just gives you the opportunity to capture that early. Obviously, then in turn, rectify it early as well. Be proactive. And then obviously on the back of that, it might save you a substantial amount financially in terms of those maintenance issues. But one of the things that a lot of operators that I talk to in terms of midterm inspections is just an opportunity just to touch base with that resident. By going, whether it be by going directly into their studio with them, by arranging a visit, it's just that chance to go in, say hello, how is everything, all the normal pleasantries. Because whether your building has got a reception or concierge front desk element, or it's a sort of standalone without that service piece, not everybody can be spoken to every day. So it does give that touch point essentially. So I would say mostly surrounding the maintenance, and also the touch point just gives that improvement to the resident experience as a whole.
I'd agree, and the thing that you get with it is a focus on the asset when you're there, isn't it? It's sort of like okay, we see you every day, we smile sweetly. If you're having a good day at work, then great. And if you're having a bad day at work, you might just shuffle past and not really fancy having a chat. These touch points of communication are a really good way of doing it. So, the guys would use that midterm as a great way to sort of check how they're getting on. They might use an event such as, drinks on a terrace or in a communal space, to catch up socially. You'll have a different sort of schedule of communication with the client that focuses on different elements of their holistic stay and community, and having those things that you can hang it off is really key. I mean, Rob, you do a lot of this at Gravity, don't you?
Yeah, well, no, I kind of wanted to touch base, and I was just on my phone and trying to work out the maths. But regarding these kind of mid-stay kind of inspections that we do with Inventory Hive, the benefit that we've seen is two main benefits, because we do already talk to our members quite frequently. So it's great to have touch points, but we have plenty of them. For us, it's one, we've been able to reduce our void periods massively, because before we used to do a check-in inventory and a check-out inventory, and we had no idea
the condition in between. Yeah,
exactly. So we used to have our SOP basically was 5 days between someone checking out and someone moving in. So 5 days guaranteed void period, even if the property was perfect or not. Doing these what we call like pre-move out inspections, and which happen usually around 6 weeks before, between 6 and 4 weeks before the tenant actually moves out. We've been able to now reduce our SOP from, if someone moves out on Monday, someone can move in on Wednesday, because
that's a good turnaround.
Yeah, any issues that we see in the property, we can already arrange parts, we can already arrange contractors, etc. So the person moves out on Monday, the end of tenancy cleaning gets done on Monday, the checkout inventory gets done on Monday, then the contractors can start coming in on the Monday afternoon and Tuesday, and then it's basically good to go again. Then a touch-up clean is done then before the move-in on Wednesday. So, like, we've been able to save with our current portfolio around, well, say 700 days in a year of additional revenue that we can now get. And
that's a very powerful stat. Very powerful.
Yeah. You can use that one if you want.
Yeah, thank you.
But it just kind of shows that the power there from an operator perspective, and those void periods, like they're needed, because you need to turn around, and it's a bit different than a hotel where you can do it the same day. But yeah, that's one massive thing that we've been able to benefit. And then the second one is expectations. We've already done the check-in inventory. We then do this pre-move out inspection, and then we go to the tenant. We go, look, mate, like, you've been great. We love you and everything, but this is what the carpet looked like when you moved in 3 months ago. This is what it looks like now. We're dealing in fact. We're not. This is evidence. It's timestamp. They understand it, and we can say that you're moving out in a couple of weeks or whatever it is. It's likely, because this isn't an official inventory here, but it's likely that there'll be some sort of deduction coming from your deposit. Or what we can do, we can try and resolve this issue before you move out. This could be getting a carpet cleaner in, etc., etc. And then all of a sudden, then you're having that touch point as human to human here, and they're understanding it a lot better. And then you either resolve it beforehand, and again, then that helps with the void period. So in a way, as an operator, actually can make more money because there's less void. Secondly, that if we do end up taking money from their deposit, which we don't want to, but it's not as drastic as them just receiving a checkout inventory report and being like, we're going to do that X amount or whatever it may be.
And it doesn't come as a shock and protects your brand then as well.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So I think that they're two massive benefits of doing this kind of pre-move out inspections and this touch point. Again, you're dealing in fact, you're respecting emotions, but you're dealing in facts. And I think that's crucial.
Oh, I completely agree.
No, that's very good points, Rob. Cheers for that. I suppose I know Giles mentioned this briefly when he was talking about some of the stuff West Harmonics does and gathers feedback, especially from residents and tenants. So, what are some of the common challenges that co-living operators face, and based on those problems, how do you tend to overcome them? I suppose that's more for you, Rob.
Well, there's quite a lot of kind of common problems, I guess you can say. I think one of the biggest kind of issues that we see basically is that kind of blurred line between hospitality and traditional residential. Is what level of service do we offer?
Expected, yeah.
What's the expectations? And again, it's so crucial that we get those expectations and we get that communication out as soon as possible. If that's within documents within Inventory Hive, when we send out the check and inventory,
yeah.
If that's through the automated emails and everything through Harmonics, it's crucial that the expectations are aligned, that they know what they're getting from us and we know what we're getting from them. So I think that's one of the biggest issues that you can see, because people can stay, and not specifically now co-living, but the term co-living now is being used on hotels, through to traditional residential, HMOs, etc. So, you may go to one co-living and you get the hotel experience. You may go to another co-living and you don't get any of that.
That's why your expectations being set at the outset are so important. No,
exactly. So I think that's one of the main kind of challenges that we have. Secondly, as well, then it's the communication, especially as we start to scale now as well. We want to be as personal as possible. We want to have that in-person human connection. Some of our properties, they're not massive. It's not like Old Oak, which is arguably the most famous co-living development, as it was one of the first. That's got 500 plus beds. They've got a whole team on site and amenities everywhere, which is great. We haven't got that. Our first problem is 34 bedrooms. We're not going to have an on-site team for these small assets. So it's about understanding, what our opportunities are to have that in-person connections, and taking away a lot of the day-to-day, the boring stuff that needs to be done through technology. It means that every second that we are on site, it's a positive human interaction. And I think that's another big one. And as we continue to scale, we're asset light. We're trying to be as agile as possible. Our staff are constantly evolving around each of our sites. So it's really important to enhance the human connections as and when we can. And then thirdly, data collection. Understanding the tenants, understanding where each asset is in its life cycle from a community perspective, and treating people as individuals as well as a collective. I think that's really crucial. And again, using the technology to collect that data, we understand like how many issues we have a month, a week, or whatever through Harmonics in Royal Heights or in Finsbury Park, and then we can see when there's a spike or a difference. We're like, okay, let's look into this now because we know it's going to have a negative impact on the community as a whole. And then you can also look at that from an individual person. So if we get a complaint or some feedback from a specific tenant, a specific member, who obviously by the looks of their email or whatever isn't having a great time, we can then look at that person specifically and be like, oh yeah, I can see here that she's had 10 issues in the last month, all regarding a water leak or whatever it may be. And we can then go like, that's why she's upset, and we understand that. Or that's why he is complaining about this or saying this, etc. And then we can work to help resolve that. Just to clarify, we don't usually have 10 water leak issues. We usually sort it out before then. But yeah, it's as we scale, it gets harder to have that connection. So it's relying on the technology for the data to enhance the human connections and to really push our overall experience through automation as well.
I think what we've sorry, Giles, carry on.
Sorry, yeah, I think that extends as well outside of the sort of operational side as to what Harmonics and what technology can provide is to make the inquiry and booking journey really smooth and seamless. With the guys at Gravity, we have the ability for guests to inquire in a sort of traditional, I'm interested in this, but they also have the ability to say, actually, I'm ready to book. I can search online. I can actually start the booking process online. They can then automate the whole search, looking at different quotes, looking at different options that are in the property, be that post viewing or pre, or even without a viewing for some of the shorter stays. And they can book online, short and long stay, to represent the flexibility of the product. And during that journey, we will do the automation of the contract or the automation of the credit check, any sort of verification processes. So that allows a really great customer experience, a really great guest experience, but it's also really key to making sure that the guys and girls who are staying in the property prior to them arriving are actually going to be a fit. You need to know that, you don't open the door to anyone moving to one of these properties. You need to know that they're going to be the right fit. They're going to be able to afford it. They're going to be able to enjoy being part of that community. And so this is an area which is challenging for Gravity and all operators as they scale. Is how do you get the right people into the right place in an easy, frictionless journey to then enable all of this fantastic facilitation of community that we talked about? Because Rob, as you know, a couple of bad eggs in a community can really make that work badly. Whereas actually, if everybody's aligned in this, it's not always possible, but when you're using all of the technological tools to allow you to make decisions that are going to give the best experience for everyone, be it host or resident, that's really where that sort of running the sweet spot of co-living is just doing that in a way that provides a great service that's frictionless and easy for people to work with.
Well, I think it sort of loops back to what Rob said previously about it's a relationship, isn't it, between host and resident, and that give and take and reciprocal effort and whatever else. And not all partners in a relationship are suitable. Just on to your point there, Giles, sort of around the metrics element, it's finding the suitable partners in that relationship and that give and take, isn't it? So I completely agree with sort of all points there. And I think one of the things we've established from this webinar really is the resident experience is paramount beyond all else.
Yeah,
always.
Nice. I suppose I was going to ask about a question about some of the feedback you get, but we kind of answered that previously, so it's great to hear everyone's points on that one. But we're coming towards the final stages of the webinar now, so thanks for everyone that's what are some of the common misconceptions?
There we go. You froze for a second. You froze for a second, Mitch, and me, Giles, and Rob were just sort of thinking, "Is he coming back or not?"
Yeah.
Right, it's coming to the end. Has he had enough?
No, we'll come on to the final question. So yeah, so what are some of the common misconceptions about co-living, and how do you tend to address them? While you're answering that, I'll just move closer to my Wi-Fi port to make sure it works. So give me you answer that question. I'll be back in a second. So, yeah.
I think for me, I mean, I've only really been strongly involved in the co-living space probably for the last 12 to 18 months. Prior to that, it was more all build to rent focus. And I think when I first got involved with co-living, my first impression was this was more student focused, and that's not the case at all. So I'd say that's probably was my biggest misconception. And when I talk to other people in the industry, it's their misconception initially as well, until there's a slight education involved around it. I mean, Rob, do you come across that element a lot as well, or is that something that you've sort of curved now with the brand that you've built?
Yeah, so I think, co-living, even though it's been around for a long time in one form or another, it's still fairly new. I guess you could say a lot more from a customer perspective. People are a lot more open to it now. But also from the other side, from a kind of business growth perspective, landlords, developers, investors, etc., are kind of coming around to the idea a bit more that it's more than just kind of student accommodation.
Yeah.
I think dorms for adults was termed quite a lot, and I get where they're coming from. To be honest,
I understand the concept, but not a very good sales tagline. That is it.
Yeah. I think that's one of the main ones that we at Gravity are trying to clearly stay away from.
Yeah.
I think another one is just if you've got the word co-living in your title, doesn't necessarily mean it is co-living. We see a lot of these people using that word now across a variety of property types. But I think for us, co-living, it's more than just amenity space. I think I mentioned it earlier. It's how you facilitate and operate that space that makes it into a co-living. And obviously, the more amenity space, the better. But you don't necessarily need to have a lot of space to still co-live. It doesn't need to be an ensuite bedroom or studio. We've got studios, 1-bed, 2-bed, and 3-bed apartments as well in buildings. And granted, there's little or even in some cases no communal space there. So it's very much more of a traditional, potentially kind of build to rent property. But because we have that online community aspect, and because we work with local partners and do those local events in that way, we've been able to add that layer of kind of co-living without needing all the amenity spaces. And I think, the final one, and this is going to sound quite negative, but co-living isn't cheap. It's not necessarily overly affordable. And it's good value for money, but it's not cheap. And what I mean by this is you may be in a studio or an ensuite bedroom with a shared kitchen or whatever, and it'll be cheaper than a 1-bed if you would rent it individually. But when you look at all the benefits that come with co-living, it could be an on-site gym, or it could be discounted this, it could be this service, it could be X, Y, and Z. When you look at the whole picture, it's good value for money, and it would be cheaper than a 1-bed equivalent or something like that. But when you look at the starting rents and the starting price, you're going to be a bit like, oh, well, that's not affordable. But when you see what's all included, and that's why it's so important to get the right people through the front door so they understand it. If you're not going to take advantage of the community aspect, don't bother, because there's cheaper options. If you are going to take advantage of the community, the service, and X, Y, and Z, then sign up straight away, because it's good value, and it'll be the kind of catalyst for you to grow professionally, socially, and everything else in between. But yeah, that's one thing I wanted to kind of put out there.
Yeah, I think it's that your point is around the experience, isn't it? You're not just buying an apartment that you're moving into, you're buying much more, and that is a misconception, but it's actually very aligned with. I know you talked about it not being student, but it's kind of started in that PBSA world where you move into a home and a community and a service all in one. And actually, as people are leaving university and coming out, then, you know, co-living is a great opportunity for people to continue that experience, and they will value that, and they're not necessarily comparing it to, oh, I can take a flat share, because that is an experience, but it's not the same type of experience. It's not a house in multiple occupation either.
Apples and oranges, isn't it? Yeah.
It is. It's buying an experience. But the thing that I thought was really interesting is that, you know, we've seen co-living where they're focusing on not just young professionals, as an example, but they're doing it for entrepreneurs. Or we've just opened one with a client in Sweden where they've done it purely for people who are interested in computer gaming and in the software industry. And so they've actually done a building for gamers. And I thought that was a really interesting co-living experience, because it's the same sort of thing. You've got rooms which are very nice. They're not huge, but they're very nice. They've got all the facilities to cook and live in. They've got communal areas, but they've actually gone and built some gaming rooms where people in the building can actually go and play games downstairs in different ways and different sort of setups for gamers. And that's with a focus on, there's a lot of software developers in and around Stockholm. And it is a classically sort of lonely sort of setup, is to move in, be a software developer and go off. And it's a really good application of the community and co-living with a theme. And it's this theme of actually who are we looking after here, you know. And I thought that's an interesting, moving away from that, it's cheap and it's
all about the value add, isn't it? It's all about the value add.
Yeah. And you know, I think the evolution of this is to specialize, to make sure that you're looking after your market really, really well. I'm excited to see how it evolves.
No, I really appreciate your time today, guys. I think we're pretty much smack on an hour, which is absolutely perfect from my perspective, because it shows that we've got the content absolutely right from a marketing perspective. So no, really appreciate your time, guys. Everyone that's tuned in, I hope you found today's webinar really useful. If anyone's got any questions, again, just pop them in the chat box on the side, and I'm sure Giles, Alex or Rob will be more than happy to answer your questions. And before we go, if you guys just want to chip in any contact details, if you want to get in touch or reach out specifically, whether it's via LinkedIn, then that'd be smashing. So
yeah, I think it's important for me just to mention and be transparent on this, that the reason us three we're all on this webinar with Mitch is because we are all mutually aligned, meaning Inventory Hive have an integration with Res Harmonics, which Rob and Gravity co-living utilize, which is obviously why all three of us were here today. So if you've got any questions about that, feel free to get in touch.
Yeah, I'd be delighted to. And you know, we're obviously at resharmonics.com, and very keen to continue to work with Rob and his team, and to see the ongoing development of that, and also to see how we can help people who are using Inventory Hive. So we look forward to hearing from you.
I heard Rob mention double in size year on year a couple of times, so I'd quite like to maintain that relationship and see how far it goes and continue to see that growth, Rob. That's brilliant.
Absolutely perfect. Yeah.
And if anyone needs a place to stay in London, let me know.
That's brilliant. I've really enjoyed this one, chaps. So
nice.
Thank you for joining.
Yeah, thank you everyone.
Thank you, guys.
And we'll catch you soon. Cheers, guys.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.